You must listen to this entire message before entering a selection. To accept this call, press 5. To refuse this call, hang up now. To block this call and all future calls, press none. You may enter a selection now.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to episode 5 of To Accept This Call. Thank you for joining us. Episode 5. Before we even jump into what episode 5 is going to entail, how are you, Aundrea? What's up?
I'm doing good. An update on everything was Benjamin tested positive for COVID.
Tested negative 4 times.
4 times. And then on the 5th time, he tested positive, which is crazy because, I mean, he wasn't sick when him and Jake were roommates, even though Jake had tested positive. And then, you know, like he was in the cell, got put in a cell by himself, and was doing fine. And then they put a recovered positive in with him. And then that's when he became sick. And it's just like, great quarantine method, guys.
It seems like the people who have tested positive and recovered from COVID kind of get a little bit more privileges than the ones that haven't got it at all, because they're trying to like delay all the negative people getting it. So like Jake got to go back to work this past week because he was positive and he'd recovered. But anybody who works at his workplace that was negative still doesn't get to go back. Like they're still technically on lockdown, and they're all still technically on lockdown, but yeah, he at least gets to go back to work and like have some sort of sense of normalcy.
And today's Jake's birthday.
Today's Jake's birthday. It's Friday, August 7th. We're recording it. He turned 28 years old today. I know that there's probably better ways to be spending a birthday, but yeah, we thought that because it's his birthday, it'd be a perfect opportunity to just talk about him all day long, and he was So tonight's episode is going to be Jake's story, which we're all probably been waiting for, just to hear more about it.
Because I don't really know his story too much. Like, I know that he has the same like charges as Ben, and that's pretty much the gist of it. You know, I don't know like a whole lot of details, or you know what happened, or who he was before he went in and stuff like that. So
yeah, it'll be exciting. And then by the time that everybody else is seeing this too, Aundrea is gonna have had her birthday. Woo woo!
Woo! Yep, on Sunday. Whopping friggin' 33 years old.
Okay, so before we even start talking about Jake, we got an email from someone.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to read that, and then we're just going to give like a little bit of advice real quick, because it's always interesting, and I think it's important to know what's going on at other facilities so that we can either not repeat those mistakes or try to prevent them in any way we possibly could, and just to like, so people can hear the experience, because it's important. So
Absolutely.
Okay, so this email, again, and we always are confidential with emails. Like, we're not going to say your name. We're not going to give away any identifying information unless you, like, say, hey, this is important, and you can say it. So I'll just start reading it. It says, I reside in California Central Valley. My boyfriend is currently in Pelican Bay, although I am thankful that specific facility has been able to maintain a low number of people who have been positive for COVID, especially because so many of the inmates there are much older men who have been there for years. Well, this last week, they finally tested men who had not been tested prior, my boyfriend being one of them. And what he told me was so upsetting. He told me that the nurse who was testing had not changed her gloves. Like, really, you're coming in contact with multiple people. That would be the first thing that you do. And then when my boyfriend told her that if she could please change her gloves before she did his test, she became upset. And then she told one of her coworkers to do the boyfriend's test because she couldn't deal with it, her words. But apparently they're not allowing any of the men to receive their packages right now because of COVID. And then they put out another statement saying that they were not going to be receiving them because of the staff being harmed while distributing the package. I think it's so unfair, and I feel so helpless. So I wanted to ask you ladies how I can help and find out what is really going on. Thank you so much. I love your podcast, and Ear Hustle is awesome. I listened to all the episodes. You girls will love it. So another Ear Hustle shout out too.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, it's so hard getting information from them regardless of COVID. And then, now they have the added stress of COVID, like the staff does. But, it's kind of like we talked about in the COVID episode. And it's like they should have had an outline or guideline or protocol knowing that this is going to happen. And unfortunately, a lot of prisons aren't like the ones that, our guys are in. They're a little bit more prisony.
Yeah, that's a good
where
way.
they're a little bit more hostile, and where they do have like guys that maybe are lifers or have a long sentence, and so they don't really care about the repercussions, and so they might throw a little bit more of a fit, than others might. And so, yeah, maybe the guards are getting harmed, but at the same time, like, that's your, the DOC's job to figure it out and how to take care of these guys who are in your care. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's really hard, like, to try to find out who and within the DOC you can trust. I would say maybe reaching out like to the ACLU.
Another area of opportunity for that I've read up on before. I have no idea how to pronounce this word, so probably gonna butcher it. But the ombudsman, is that?
Yep, the ombudsman. Yep.
Ombudsman. Yeah, I read a little bit about that. They kind of deal with like, they have like medical, and I did a little bit of research like on this specific facility just because I wanted to like look into it, because I was like, what does she mean packages? So apparently in some California prisons, and probably other ones across the country, you can send care packages through a specific company to your incarcerated loved one. And that includes like food and hygiene and things like that. Like, you have the opportunity to send that to them and like pick it out. And, for some people, that's their only way of getting those types of things too. So when they're saying that they can't get those packages, that is really concerning. And there needs to be some sort of protocol to allow them to have those basic needs, in my opinion. So yeah. I think from what I've heard and like from what I've read, the ombudsman sounds like somebody that might be able to kind of address that, especially regarding the nurse too, because that's a medical issue. Like, she needs to change her gloves, and she should know that as a nurse. Like, that's not good at all.
No,
so, hope that helps. Thank you for writing in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's hard too, because like, every place is so different, but these are like the channels that, I've heard of people having success with, are following like the ACLU, and, even just like being loud on social media sometimes too will help, where you're like, listen up, like, this is not happening, and if you get enough, they're like, oh shit, we don't want our name to be tarnished like that out here. So,
and that's another thing I would do too, is get on like Facebook or even Instagram or Twitter and just like hashtag search, Pelican Bay prison to see if there's other people out there, like, the more people you can have like the same stories, then you guys can collectively go and say, hey, I'm not the only one that's dealing with this. Like, here's 15 other women who are having the issue too. So
for sure.
Kind of like a power is the numbers thing. So reach out and see if there's any kind of like Facebook group that is specifically to that specific prison.
Update and tell us what happens. Please, please, please.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have a whole Google document that I had to write down to talk about Jake, because he's a lot, just in general. So let's start at the very beginning. August 7th.
Jake was born August 7th.
Yeah. And his social security number. No, I'm just kidding. He was born August 7th in Waterloo, which is like it's not a small town in Iowa, but it's a small town in general. his mom, her name is Kristen, and his dad's name is Mike. They were never married, and Jake wasn't really close with his dad growing up. He tells me that he only has like 3 memories of his dad total. He was a drug addict and an alcoholic, so that's really tough, you know. I would say his upbringing was like as pretty normal. Like he wasn't like super wealthy, he wasn't in poverty or anything, but he was raised by a single mom, so like all of the struggles that kind of come with that. But something I think that's like super worth noting in like the exposition of Jake's story and like of Jake's life. So when he was 8, and for the record too, I told him I was doing this. I was like, is there anything you don't want me to talk about? Like,
Yes.
is there anything that's like kind of off limits? And he is such an open book.
Good.
So yeah, he was like, no, just say whatever. Like, I don't care. So, and Jake's an only child too. That's something that I kind of brushed over. He's an only child and he's a Leo. So like, take that however you want to take it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I was like, an only child and a Leo. So that just encompasses him as a person. I could literally stop the podcast there, and that's everything you need to know about.
And that's all you need to know about Jake.
That's Jake. But he's the Leoest Leo I've ever met, honestly. Like,
that's hilarious.
Yeah. But okay, back to his dad. So when Jake was 8 years old, his dad was arrested on first-degree robbery charges, and he was booked into the Benton County Jail. And, you know, obviously 11 years later, Jake was going to be arrested for the exact same thing on first-degree robbery charges. So that's an interesting parallel. Happened. And Jake, again, he wasn't close with his dad, so he doesn't really have any feelings or opinions on, like, when his dad was arrested. Like, while his dad was awaiting trial, and like it was only a matter of a couple days after he'd been arrested, he ended up killing himself inside of the jail. And yeah, so I remember Jake told me that his mom came and picked him up from school, and he didn't really know what was going on, and she just like pulled over on the side of the road and told him, and she was crying, and he was just, again, they're not close, so he didn't really know what to think. But yeah, and one of the only memories that Jake has of his dad, which I think is really like fascinating to me just from a psychological perspective, he wanted to tell this story like at his dad's funeral, but he was like too scared to get up and do it. He's also 8 years old. So the story was that his dad, like, one time he gave him like a padlock that Jake had up until he went to prison. He gave him a padlock, and he told him that if anybody ever messes with him, to put the padlock, hold it like, and put it around his fist, and then like deal with it. I was like, okay, you know, at 8 years old, or I don't even know when that
conversation happened.
Yeah, kind of like how his dad thought to handle situations, it seems, and he wanted to pass that on to his son.
That's insane.
And then, so he, obviously Jake was like growing up, his mom like got remarried to Ron when Jake was like 13 or 14. He'd already started getting in trouble, like smoking weed, partying, drinking, and he would get in trouble a lot for stealing, just like always boosting stuff. And he'd been arrested like a couple times in juvenile, like gotten in trouble, but at 16 is when he first got arrested for felony robbery. Him and this isn't even the thing that sent him to prison. This is before all this happened. Him and some buddies were gonna go buy weed from some guy, and it was like the middle of winter, and they met him behind an elementary school. And the dude's car ended up like getting stuck in the snow. And so the guys went over there to try to like help him get out of the snow, and they were like pushing him and trying to, you know, help him out or whatever. But the whole time they knew that they were intending to like steal from him, to like steal his weed and his money, but they were still trying to help him. I'm like, doesn't make sense to me. But apparently they eventually collectively all just said like, you know, fuck it. And we're like, all right, we're going to take your stuff now. So they did. Someone had a gun there at the scene, but there were no bullets in it, is what Jake told me. But he ended up getting caught, and he got probation as well as a suspended 10-year prison sentence for first-degree theft. So he got what he calls a slap on the wrist. Like, he did not get in that much trouble. He didn't have a whole lot of accountability for that. And then, so he was still, like, living that life, doing things that he shouldn't have done the whole time, because, like I said, like, he didn't learn his lesson, and he got this slap on the wrist. And he thought, like, for lack of better terms, he thought he was invincible. He thought he could do whatever. You know, he's a young guy, a Leo, only child. What am I trying to say? I don't know. But, yeah. But in March of 2010, he had a daughter. His daughter was born, Aaliyah, and him and his baby mama were, like, not together, and it was a big accident and everything. He always tells me, he's like, she wasn't supposed to catch my seed. I'm like, okay. Yeah, so Aaliyah was born, and then not long after, so this is the case that he caught his case on and is now in prison for. On New Year's Day of 2011, him and two of his buddies at the time, they knew of this drug dealer who lived in Cedar Falls that was going to be out of town with his girlfriend on New Year's. So they were going to break into his house and steal, like, his weed and his money. So they went in to the house because they didn't expect them to be home, but then when they got there, they found out that they were in fact home. And they had also already dressed in all black and fashioned, like, ski masks on their face, and that was something that kind of, like, caught Jake up in court, because they were like, well, if you didn't intend to, like, rob people, why did you do that, you know? And the way that Jake explained it to me is that it was a duplex, so they didn't want to be seen by the other people that occupied the other side of the duplex, because it was never intended to be more than just, like, a minute thing, you know? It was like an in and out, let's do this, whatever. Yeah. So they got inside. They apparently flipped a mattress on top of John and Amanda and, like, told them to stay down. And apparently somebody else had a gun. It wasn't Jake. Jake's job was to go and get the money and the weed and, like, actually get it. And then the other two, I guess, were there for, I don't know what they were there for. I don't know how that stuff works, but
moral support.
Yeah, moral support. Yes. Jeez. Yeah.
No.
They stole, so they stole drugs, they stole money, and then they took a cell phone from them, which was actually the thing that got them caught, because the cell phone had GPS on it. And so Amanda, she used her computer to track it and then let the cops know. So they got caught pretty quickly, and then they were booked. I want to iterate, too, that I don't think that what they did was right in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, nobody was hurt. They were dealing with illegal activity with illegal activity. Like he took illegal drugs and illegal money from somebody who obtained it because it was illegal, you know? So it's like, that's just interesting for me to fathom. And I understand that, like, no physical damage was done, and I'm sure that it was super scary. Like, nobody deserves that, but at the same time, it's a drug crime.
Yeah. And my take on it too is, and, you know, I'll talk about this in Ben's story too. It's like, I don't know if the guy that, like, Jake robbed was, like, a known drug dealer, but, like, they're drug dealers. It's not surprising that they get robbed. The whole town is buying weed and other drugs from them. It's like, duh, you know? Yeah. So did everybody on Jake's case get charged with first-degree robbery then?
No. So him and Christian is the other one, both have first-degree robbery. And then John Trell, I don't think... He might have beat the robbery case. He might have got, like, theft or burglary, because he was only sentenced to 15 years, I want to say, and he's already out. So they all had equal parts in it, from what I'm understanding, but not unusual sentencing. And the thing too that to know is that with the charge that Jake got of first degree robbery, in the way that his crime was committed of robbing a drug dealer of weed and money, it carries the same weight in the court of law as if, you know, somebody were to break into an 80-year-old woman's house, strangle her, steal her purse, like beat the crap out of her, and it's the exact same thing in the eyes of the law. But to me, I'm like, those are two very different things.
It's weird how crime can have morals, but it does in a sense.
The thing too that you were saying about being like him being a known drug dealer, this guy named John, it's actually really interesting because John's dead now because he was eluding from the police on a motorcycle and he crashed into a tree and he died like a couple of years ago. Yeah.
In a sense, you could probably like compare the guys' crimes to like olden day like mobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like just crime on crime, not really like hurting society necessarily. You know, you're not, like you said, not hurting any like old ladies or kids or anything like that. It's like a situational thing, you know?
Exactly. Like he was engaged in a lifestyle that traditionally warrants other crimes. You know, it's a dangerous lifestyle. If you're living a dangerous lifestyle, you're going to have elements of danger, you know? This is weird to me to think about too. He was a senior in high school when this happened. He was still in high school when he committed his crime. Like, that is
wild.
Yeah, and so he got booked into Blackhawk County Jail, and for most of the time that he was in jail, like 7 or 8, like he was in jail for a year, and for 7 or 8 months out of that, he was in solitary confinement the whole time. Like, the whole time.
For what?
As an 18-year-old kid, because he was really angry. He was always trying to fight the cops. Like, he'll admit it, too. Yeah. Always trying to fight the cops. He did twice. He was so threatening. He's like, I'll shoot everybody up in here. And that's, like, so scary to me to hear and so weird because that's not him. You know what I mean?
Like, right.
But I didn't know him, you know? So it's hard for me to put myself back there to be like, but I knew people like him, you know, I can imagine the type that he was, but looking at him today, I'm like, that's not him. And keep in mind too, like his family, I'm sure was freaked out because of the situation with his dad dealing with the exact same charges, you know, like that must have been so scary to even.
Do you think that one of the first questions I had earlier that popped up in my mind was, do you think that like if his dad didn't kill himself and went on with like the sentencing, that would have kind of helped detour Jake onto like the right path? Or do you think that it was kind of like monkey see, monkey do, like my dad can handle it, I can handle it type of thing? You know what I mean?
I don't know. It's like, it's hard too because it wasn't like his parents were together. I don't know. I'll have to ask him that question too because I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. You would hope so. You know, you would hope that seeing it would be like, fuck, I don't want to have anything to do with that kind of life. But yeah, but I'm sure too that like him being in Blackhawk County Jail, him having all these issues, and I'm sure his family was hearing about it. We're like, oh my God, Jake is not in a good place. Like, hope, you know, I hope it doesn't go too far or whatever. And so like because of these circumstances, during his trial, he had to wear like a belt around. He was in handcuffs. He was bolted to the floor. Like he was treated like he.
It's so crazy. Like
yeah, I know.
I laugh not because like it's funny that it like had to do that. I laugh because I think of seeing him in the visiting room and like the person that he is, and he's goofy and he jumps around and he's like a wild
little
man.
dude
and,
too. He's just like this little like
like, and so for him to like, for me to think of him as being aggressive is like hilarious in my mind.
I'm sure that to the jury too, like they're like, oh my God, this guy, like, holy buckets, you know, that's a scare tactic in a sense. And they don't usually do that in court because of that, you know, but they really they really deemed him as a risk. So
Yeah.
kind of scary. The trial happened, obviously, and he was found guilty of first-degree robbery, burglary, and he has like a possession of a controlled substance charge on there too. And because he had that suspended prison sentence that gave him 10 years, and he got 25 years for the rest of it, which could serve concurrently, which means that like he's accruing time for all of it. It doesn't have to go, you finish this one, and then you have to do the next one, and then you have to do the next one. So,
That's good, yeah.
Yeah, so he technically was sentenced to 35 years at the age of, he was 19 by then when he got sentenced. So, and at the sentencing too, his judge, Judge George Stigler is what I remember, because I looked him up. I was like, I gotta write this judge and have him help me. His judge too said even that like that his hands were tied and he couldn't do anything about it. He knew that Jake needed to go to prison, but he did not need to go to prison for this long, and that he was really like sorry that he couldn't do more about it. Because, you know, we kind of talked about this too, with mandatory sentencing, it takes away all control from the elected officials that we have, you know, said should be, you know, just, what am I trying, interpreting
Their
the law.
Yeah, like their discretion.
Exactly. It takes all the power away from them. And, you know, somebody who could have, like, who sees what prison could do to somebody, like, and is able to interpret that, like, they don't get a say in it, which is dumb.
Judges mostly hate it because it doesn't give them any power, or both, you know, it's good and bad for people, because like people like Ben and Jake who rob drug dealers have to do a maximum time of 25 years. But then there's scenarios where, for example, this girl in my hometown it's a whole mess thing, but she got raped at gunpoint, and the guy who raped her got the same amount of sentencing as Ben, and Jake got 25 years with 70%, so he only has to do 17 and a half years. And it's like, it can be bad too. It's like, if the judge had more power behind it, the judge could have given him life in prison or 75 years. But since there's a mandatory minimum attached to even like sexual assaults in Iowa, they have to give him that, which a lot of times is bad.
They see these things all the time, you know, and I think that a lot of judges are intuitive in the sense that they can see like a person, you know, they can tell when somebody's faking it, they can tell if they're being honest, they know, you know, they see all of this all the time, you know, and then one lawmaker can come in and decide like, oh, I don't like people that rob people, that's too mean, we're gonna impose this here, you know, and they don't have to do it every day, you know, they don't get to see the inner workings of it. I feel so weird when either he talks cavalierly about it, or, you know, I'm starting to talk more cavalier about it, because I do think it's a very serious thing. I want to make that so clear that, like, I think it's serious, but just kind of the things that we were talking about, I also can kind of view it from all perspectives. But yeah, so Jake goes to prison, and he still has his 1-year-old daughter. She's not even 1 year old. His daughter, left behind. And he literally told me that he had no idea what to expect when he got to prison. The only thing that he knew was like TV and movies about prison. And as we know, they're not accurate at all. Like, he thought it was going to be freaking Shawshank. And so he had like some money that he had stacked up from whatever it was. And he told his mom to send him all of his money, because he was convinced that he was going to have to stab someone. And he was going to have to like show him who was like boss, or I don't know what he thought. Like, he's like, if anybody tries me, like, I'm going to get him or whatever. That was his mentality back then, because he didn't know what to expect.
Is Fort Dodge the first prison then was at?
No, he went to Newton first. He did 5 years at Newton. After that 5 years, the Department of Corrections decided that Newton was going to only house sex offenders. A sex offender camp, so that they could all complete their treatment. So he had to get moved out to a different one, and he could have either gone to Clarinda or he could have gone to Fort Dodge. And he picked Fort Dodge because of the opportunities that they have there, which he has like 100% capitalized on. But while he was in Grinnell, while he was in Newton, he did some really good things. Like they did a Grinnell College liberal arts program where you can, it was like as many people could apply as they want, and then they would narrow it down to 40 people who, once you took like an entry test and you wrote an essay, they would decide, and then you had to go do interviews with like the board or the people that were in charge, and they had 15 people. They narrowed it down to 15 people. So Jake got picked out of those hundreds of people that applied to be in the Grinnell liberal arts program. So he was able to, he was able to get 60 credits worth of college credits at Grinnell. They initially had started it and said that they were only going to have him do like 20 to 30 or something like that. But Jake was like, I don't want to stop. So he talked to the program manager and was like, we need to keep doing this. Like, I want to keep doing it. And so then he was able to get 60. So that was really cool.
That's awesome. Good.
Yeah. And then when he got to Fort Dodge, he was in like this school kick, I guess, still too. And so he went to Iowa Central, got his AA, and he got a 4.0 average like the whole way through. Like, I didn't know he was smart. Like, when you got from him, you would not expect it. No, I'm just kidding. I'm so glad he does not get to hear this till like.
Right.
But seriously, like, he got his AA, and then he started doing like tutoring. He would mentor other people. Like, they have like people that have special needs that are incarcerated, which I never knew that either. And he would mentor them, which is that's crazy. We can talk about that probably another time too.
Yeah.
But he sets up like all the sporting events. He's on the Relay for Life committee. They fundraise every year. They give like $6,000 to cancer research. He volunteers with like the veterans group and like Special Olympics, and that he does the leader dog for the blind program where they get to like train dogs in prison that eventually get shipped out to be seeing eye dogs for people. So that's really cool.
It's like my favorite part. I hope they get him back, because since they shipped them all out, and then they had cats too.
Yeah.
They shipped all the animals out because of COVID, but they were allowed to bring them into the visiting rooms, and it was just like the best part when you saw dogs.
It's so fun too, because it's like it gives them a sense of responsibility and like something to take care of too, which is nice because that's just another way to transition you back into the real world. What else has he done? He's done so much. Like it amazes me, honestly. He's doing his carpentry apprenticeship right now. He finished all the bookwork for it, and he's done like 3,000 some hours because that's what he really like cares about is doing woodworking stuff. He really wants to continue with that when he gets out of prison. He loves to do it, make like cabinets, desks, shelves, like anything you can think of. He loves to make it. So that's cool.
That's awesome. It's a good like skill trade to have.
For sure. And I like that about Fort Dodge and some of the other prisons too, is that they really do, I think, like give them those kind of opportunities to learn the skills like welding and the technical jobs that are kind of in more demand out here. Like I really think they do a good job of providing them with those opportunities. Oh, my favorite part. So in June of 2019, so like a year and some change ago, he submitted his commutation to the parole board and to the governor that was over like 200 pages long. I got to read it. That just talked about like his accomplishments, written statements from like himself, his loved ones, like support letters. He started a petition that had like 1,300 support signatures that, were in support of him returning to society. But I think kind of what we talked about earlier too, one of the most important parts is that he was able to get quite a few names of staff from Fort Dodge that would be willing to write support letters from him. However, the institutional guidelines prevent them from actually writing it unless specifically requested from the parole board or the governor. And I think it might just be due to favoritism or something like that. They don't want to show favoritism among the incarcerated. So, but if at any time, like the governor or the parole board wanted to reach out to like the employees of the facility and be like, what's the scoop on Jake? Like, these are the people that can tell them that, because they see him every single day. They know what he's about. They see the way he acts, the way he like is with other people.
I think that would be great if somehow that was like part of like paroles or just anything to let especially like the COs, like, and staff members, let them voluntarily like be like, hey, yeah, I'm gonna write this little ditty about Jake and how great he is, and send it off and be like, he doesn't need to be here anymore. The end. Get him out.
Yeah, they really just, like, when it comes to parole, a lot of the time they just look at people on paper. Like, they see, has he had any major reports? Has he, been in the hole? Has he done this, that? Like, did he get his treatment done? Everything like that. And then it's the counselor and the facility that are like, oh, because of these things, we recommend him for release. But they don't look at, like, the actual person. They just look at, like, things. You know what I mean? And for the record, too, Jake has literally only been in the hole one time since he's been in prison. Yeah, so I'm like, that's kind of good. Like, proud of him, which, yeah, again,
didn't need to stab anybody after all. Apparently.
Yeah. You'll have to make fun of him when you see him next time and be like, I thought you were going to Shawshank this bitch. Like,
next time I'm in the room, I'll be like, don't Shawshank me.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
be like, yeah, but he'll love it. He'll totally get it. Yeah. So, yeah, no, he hasn't gotten in trouble, and he, like, from what I've heard, and I could be wrong, he could definitely be lying to me the whole time, but, like, everybody, it seems like, thinks that Jake is a good guy and that he deserves, this opportunity to come out. So we're hoping and, like, just pleading that the governor will see it, the Board of Parole will see it, and, grant him this commutation. If worst comes to worst, if worst comes to worst, his mandatory minimum is up on July 2nd of 2028. So 8 more years, which, barring any, legislative changes or anything like that. So, and that's really interesting too, because you and Ben got together when he had about 8 years left. So now he's at, 4-ish, right? Like 4.
Yeah.
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 And me and Jake got together when he has 8 years left. So it's like,
ooh, that's a good sign.
It is kind of cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's just, like, super ready to be out, I mean, as you can imagine. Like, he feels so bad that he's, like, left his family, left his daughter. He has missed 10 years of her life. He really doesn't want to miss any more. He wants to do so many things. Like, before he turns 35 is when he would get out. So he's like, I want to get all this done before I'm, like, an old man and I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Not saying 35 is old, but, like, he's just like, I'm just ready. He's just antsy and he's ready, and he knows that prison is wasted on him, because he could be one of the most productive members of society, in my opinion. He has so many big dreams, and he has the resources, the support, the tools to achieve those too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's pretty much the present situation. Just kind of like in limbo with everything. The governor and the Board of Parole halted all commutation proceedings just because of COVID, but it's like, fine, what does that mean? Like, I don't know. So again, we're just waiting, kind of a waiting game all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, too, like, another thing is that, and I'm gonna shamelessly plug here too, but, like, he can still add to his commutation, like, throughout this whole process. So, like, if there's anybody that is interested in or wants to, like, write just, like, a little something for support, like, if you know me or if you know him, like, and you're watching this, or even if, if you're just like, man, I think that's bad sentencing, like, he deserves a second chance, like, write to me. I'll hook you up with, like, what to do. We can work on it together. He would appreciate it, like, so much, and I'm not asking for it, but if you feel compelled, like, and if you feel like, you are, like, if you feel like I do, a little bit crazy and frustrated about it, like, channel it productively for us, please, because that would be awesome. Just all the support that he can get, like, in his re-entry is going to look great. He has, like, he has a certified, like, employment verification, which is something that the parole board really looks at, is like, do you have housing? Do you have a job lined up? Do you have this, that, and the other? And he has all of that. He could get out of prison tomorrow, walk into this place called Gray Transportation in Waterloo, and get a job.
I mean, like, it's just, like, crazy how they're already, like, set up to come home, except for their sentencing. It's like,
it's the one thing that's stopping them. Yeah.
whew.
I know, it's a lot to unpack. And then I have one little last bit too, because I have to shout out to my friend Kelly. My friend Kelly, we went to middle school and I think a little bit of high school together. We were pretty close friends. I haven't talked to her in quite a while. But she reached out and was like, I listened to your podcast. I had no idea about Jake. Like, wow, I'm really intrigued. And she sent me like this long list of questions. And I was like, heck yeah. I was so excited. I was like, yes. Because it makes me happy to like, and it helps us understand too that like, sometimes we need to explain certain things because we're so used to it that they don't realize this. So I picked out just like 3 little questions that are pertinent to kind of what we were just talking about. And then the rest of them, I think that we can probably just disperse them throughout the next few episodes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Has Jake ever reflected on his crime? And if so, what did he express? What did they express, Jake and Ben? For Jake anyways, he's definitely reflected on it. He has spent 10 years reflecting on it. And his whole consensus is that he was stupid. And we even talked about it again tonight. He's like, I was dumb, thought I was invincible, couldn't get in trouble, just dumb. He just knows that it was dumb. And I always ask him too, like, what changed inside of you that, you know, you wouldn't do it again? And he's like, I don't know. And he doesn't know. And I think that that's acceptable. I think that's an acceptable answer because sometimes you just mature and sometimes you just grow up and you realize what's important, and I really think that he's done that. So he has reflected on it, and we've all come to the consensus that he was stupid, shouldn't have done it, and he's never going to do it again. And if he does, bye. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, Ben has definitely reflected on it. You know, he spent some time in the hole, quite a bit, which we'll get there, you know, but I don't know, like, I know he regrets it. I know he's like sad and mad and upset, and that it happened and everything went down the way that it did. I mean, he's been in prison for 13 years and it has worn him down. He always tells me, he's like, I could never do this ever again, nor would I, like, he would want to, but just that time that he has to do is like ungodly. Like, it's so unbearable to him. And then just, you know, like he tells me too about the people, not like Jake and his friends, but the other people that are in there that he is like forced to be around. He's like, I don't want to ever have to be around these people again. Like,
he calls them bottom of the barrel. He always says, he goes, I'm with the
bottom of the barrel.
Bottom of the barrel. He hates it.
Yeah. So.
And final question. Yeah. Do your parents, friends, family visit or talk to Jake and Ben? And again, we kind of discussed this a little bit, like, with you and yours, because it's been a long time that you and Ben have been together and known each other. But for me, anyways, my sister and my mom have talked to him on the phone, like when we've been on the phone together. And my mom said the other day, it was kind of interesting to me. She goes, so, like, how would I go about, like, meeting him? I was like, oh, Mom, you want to meet him? I was like, you want to, like, yeah, I was like, you want to go visit? Like, and she's like, well, yeah, I want to meet him at some point. I was like, but you would go, like, to prison to go meet him? And he was like, yeah. I was like, oh, good. Okay. So I told him that, and it made him really happy. It made me pretty happy too that she was
good. That's awesome.
Up to that. And I made fun of her because I was like, Mom, you're not gonna know what to do. Like, she's such a square. And I was like, she's probably gonna try to bring like snacks and whatever, and she's gonna be like, let's just pack a little like lunch. She would too. She'd be just like that. Yeah. Or she'd like hilarious. And she's single right now too, so I mean, maybe she'll get some looks or whatever. I'm just kidding. But
the thing, you know, they'll be like, Jake, yo, who's that girl that was with you? And he'll be like, yeah, that's Savannah, my girlfriend. No, I know her, the other one.
Yeah.
And be like, that's her mom. Tell her mom I said, what's up?
You know it will happen. Like, it will absolutely
it will.
In one way or another. But yeah, so she's excited about that. I try to keep my sister away from him. Like, that sounds really bad, but she's just so weird. Like, she's the weirdest person ever, but they get along fine. And she's just too like gung-ho about him. I think that I'm just like, chill out, lady. Like, she's gonna scare him away. So That's it. But yeah.
Yeah, my mom got on Ben's visiting list like right before COVID happened, so we didn't have a chance. But she like talks to him. They talked on. He called me, and sometimes he'll be like, "Where's mom at?" And I'm like, "She's right here." And then I let them talk, and next thing I know, Brenda pops up, and it's 20 or 1 minute remaining. I'm like, "You stole my whole freaking phone call, you mom!"
I know.
Like,
What the heck?
and she like he has her number, just in case for like emergencies. He has like my brother's numbers. Hopefully he'll never have to use them, but like just in case. Yeah, so my family talks to him. They love him. So my brother, like Seth, will like talk about, oh, when he gets home, like when he gets out, when he comes home, like I'll have to show him this or talk to him about this, and I'm just like, oh, I just love that.
I know.
Because yeah, because my family is like everything to me. So to know that they like love Ben just as much as I do is like.
Okay, so I guess that wraps up this episode. Everything about Jake. That was a lot.
No.
Getting it all out on
But what I want to know now from like listeners, subscribers, is if they have any questions after you telling Jake's story, if they have any questions for you about his story or his sentencing or him growing up or him being in, you know, just like everything we talked about, if they have any questions about that. Yeah. So if there's like anything that, you know, like that listeners think that like you missed or wasn't like, you know, clear on or anything like that, then definitely let us know and she can explain more.
Yeah, and then we can kind of also use that as a guiding thing for you talking about Ben too, so that people can understand, you know, we can make sure that we cover it all because there are lots of questions, you know, we all have questions and like that's the point of the podcast too, is to be open and honest and vulnerable about these kinds of situations because they're real life and they're happening and it's important. So yeah, write in. Our Gmail is toacceptthiscall@gmail.com. Twitter, Instagram, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everything like that. To accept this call.
Except for Twitter's just accept this call.
Yes, I always forget that one. But it's all you can on it. Yeah.
You're smart people, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And happy early birthday, Aundrea.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we'll see you guys next week.
For Ben's story, and it's probably just gonna be as crazy. So,
okay, bye.
Bye.